The rain fell softly against the windows of the John family estate, each droplet racing down the glass like tears that had been held back for far too long. Inside the grand living room, 22-year-old John Jungkook sat on the leather sofa, his dark eyes fixed on an old photograph clutched between his fingers. The edges were worn from years of handling, the colors slightly faded, but the image remained crystal clear. 3 children no older than 7, grinning at the camera with ice cream smeared across their faces. Jungkook traced his finger over the smallest boy in the middle, the one with the boxy smile and bright eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies within them. Kim Taehyung. Even now, 13 years later, Jungkook could remember everything about that day. The way Taehyung had laughed when his strawberry ice cream dripped onto his shirt, the way the summer sun had made his honey-toned skin glow, the way he had grabbed both Jungkook's and his twin brother's hands and declared them best friends forever. Forever hadn't lasted very long. "You're looking at that picture again?" came a deep voice from the doorway. Jungkook didn't need to turn around to know it was his twin brother, John Jugk. They shared the same face, the same tall athletic build, the same dark hair that fell just past their eyebrows. But where Jungkook was softer around the edges, more introspective and artistic, Jugk was sharper, more direct, with an intensity that could make people nervous. They were 2 halves of the same soul, identical in appearance but complementary in nature. Jugk walked into the room, his footsteps silent on the plush carpet. He was dressed in all black, a fitted turtleneck and tailored slacks that emphasized his broad shoulders and lean frame. He'd just returned from overseeing one of their family's tech company branches, and exhaustion lined his handsome features. But when his eyes landed on the photograph in Jungkook's hands, that exhaustion transformed into something else. Something tender and achingly familiar. "I miss him," Jungkook said simply, his voice barely above a whisper. There was no point in pretending otherwise, not with Jugk. His twin knew him too well, knew every thought before it fully formed, every feeling before it could be named. Jugk sat down beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. It was a habit from childhood, this need to maintain physical contact, as if being apart even by inches was too much distance to bear. He looked at the photograph, and his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Every day," Jugk admitted, his voice rougher than usual. "Every single day for 13 years. They'd been inseparable once, the 3 of them. The John family and the Kim family had been friends for generations, their bonds forged through business partnerships and genuine affection. While their fathers built empires together, the Johns in technology and innovation, the Kims in international trade and commerce, their children had built something even more precious, a friendship that felt destined, written in the stars. Jungkook and Jugk had been 7 years old when they first met Taehyung, who was 5 at the time. He'd hidden behind his mother's legs at first, shy and uncertain, clutching a stuffed tiger toy that was nearly as big as he was. But the twins had been patient, coaxing him out with promises of adventure and games. Within an hour, Taehyung's shyness had melted away, revealing a boy with boundless energy, infectious laughter, and a heart so pure it made everything around him seem brighter. For 2 perfect years they'd been inseparable. The John estate and the Kim residence were only a 15-minute drive apart, and hardly a day went by when the 3 boys weren't together. They'd explored every inch of both properties, building forts in the gardens, catching fireflies in the summer evenings, sharing secrets under blanket tents during sleepovers. The twins had been protective of Taehyung from the start, their younger friend bringing out a tenderness in them that surprised their own parents. Jungkook remembered teaching Taehyung how to draw, the younger boy's tongue poking out in concentration as he tried to copy Jungkook's sketches of flowers and butterflies. Jugk had taught him Taekwondo basics in the John's private gym, always careful not to be too rough, pride swelling in his chest whenever Taehyung managed a proper kick or stance. But then everything had changed. Taehyung's father, Kim Mi-ho, had received an opportunity too significant to refuse, expanding his business empire to the United States, establishing headquarters in New York City. It was a move that promised tremendous growth for the Kim family fortune. A chance to become truly global players in international commerce. For the adults, it was a logical, necessary decision. For three young boys, it was the end of the world. Jungkook would never forget the day the Kims came to say goodbye. It had been autumn, the leaves turning gold and crimson, falling like tears from the trees. Taehyung had worn a blue sweater that matched his sad eyes, and he'd cried so hard he could barely breathe. The twins had held him between them, 9-year-old boys trying to be brave while their own hearts shattered. "I don't want to go," Taehyung had sobbed, his small hands fisting in their shirts. "I want to stay with you. Please don't make me go." But children don't get to make those decisions. The adults had made promises that felt hollow even then. They'd visit, they'd video call, they'd stay in touch. Distance wouldn't change anything. They'd always be friends. Except distance had changed everything. For the first year they'd tried. Video calls every week, messages every day. But Taehyung had been so young, struggling to adapt to a new country, a new language, a new school. The time difference made coordination difficult. The calls became less frequent, the messages shorter. Life moved forward, pulling them in different directions, until one day they realized months had passed without any contact at all. The John twins had grown up with an emptiness they couldn't name, a Taehyung-shaped hole in their lives that nothing could fill. They'd thrown themselves into their studies, into sports, into preparing to take over the family business someday. They dated other people. Gone through the motions of normal teenage experiences, but something always felt incomplete. At night, separately in their own rooms, they'd each wondered about the boy who'd left. Let's continue with the story, you got the idea. Mom mentioned the Kims at dinner last week, Jugk said suddenly, breaking the silence that had settled over them. Did you hear her? Jungkook's head snapped up, his heart rate immediately accelerating. What did she say? She said Mrs. Kim called her. They're thinking about moving back to Korea. Jugk's voice was carefully neutral, but Jungkook could see the tension in his twin's jaw, the way his hands had curled into fists on his thighs. Mr. Kim wants to oversee the Asian markets personally now. After 13 years in New York, they're coming home. The photograph slipped from Jungkook's fingers, falling face up on the coffee table where Taehyung's 7-year-old smile beamed up at them. Coming home. The words echoed in Jungkook's mind, carrying weight and possibility and terror all at once. Did she say when? Jungkook asked, his voice hoarse. Next month. Maybe sooner. Jugk finally turned to look at his twin, and in his eyes, Jungkook saw his own turbulent emotions reflected back at him. Taehyung's coming back, Kook. After all this time he's really coming back. 3 weeks later, Jungkook stood in front of his closet, having changed his outfit 4 times already. Beside him, Jugk was doing the same, though he'd never admit it. Their parents were hosting a welcome-back dinner for the Kim family, and both twins were uncharacteristically nervous. "This is ridiculous," Jugk muttered, tugging at the collar of his black dress shirt. "Why do I care what I wear? It's just Taehyung." But they both knew it wasn't just Taehyung. The boy they'd known was 7 years old when he left. He'd be 20 now, a man, not the child they'd played with in the gardens. 13 years of life had happened without them. What if he didn't remember them the way they remembered him? What if he'd changed completely? What if he looked at them as strangers? What if he was already in love with someone else? That last thought made Jungkook's stomach twist uncomfortably. He smoothed down his burgundy button-up shirt and tried to steady his breathing. Through their bedroom windows, they could see cars pulling up to the estate, their parents' friends and business associates, all eager to welcome the Kim family back to Korean high society. "We should go down," Jungkook said, though neither of them moved. The sound of the doorbell echoed through the house and both twins froze. Their mother's delighted voice drifted up from downstairs, warm greetings and exclamations of joy. The Kims had arrived. Jugk grabbed Jungkook's wrist, his grip tight enough to leave marks. "Whatever happens," he said, his voice low and intense, "we handle this together. Like everything else." Jungkook nodded, drawing strength from his twin's presence the way he always had. Together they descended the grand staircase, their steps synchronized without thought. The entrance hall was crowded with guests. But the twins' eyes immediately found their parents near the door, embracing an elegant couple they recognized even after all these years. Mr. Kim Miho had more gray in his hair now. Distinguished and successful in an expensive suit. Mrs. Kim Era was still beautiful, graceful in a designer dress, her smile warm and genuine as she hugged Mrs. John. They looked happy to be home, settled in a way that suggested this move was permanent. But Taehyung wasn't with them. Jungkook felt his heart sink with disappointment so acute it was almost physical pain. Had he not come? Had he stayed in New York? 13 years of waiting and he couldn't even. "Sorry I'm late." A voice called from the doorway, slightly breathless and deeper than Jungkook remembered, but somehow still familiar in a way that made his soul ache with recognition. "I got lost trying to find the bathroom and ended up in what I think was a library?" The crowd parted and Jungkook forgot how to breathe. The man, because there was no other word for him, standing in the doorway was possibly the most beautiful human being Jungkook had ever seen. He was tall, though still slightly shorter than the twins, with a slender build that somehow managed to be both delicate and strong. His honey-toned skin was flawless, glowing in the warm light of the chandelier. But it was his face that stole Jungkook's breath completely. Taehyung had grown into his features in a way that defied description. His eyes were large and expressive, framed by long lashes, holding a unique depth that seemed almost otherworldly. His nose was perfectly straight, elegant. His lips were full and naturally pink, curved into an apologetic smile that was somehow both shy and captivating. His dark hair was styled in soft waves that fell across his forehead, a few strands falling into his eyes in a way that made Jungkook want to reach out and brush them back. He wore a simple cream-colored sweater and well-fitted dark jeans, nothing ostentatious, but he didn't need elaborate fashion. His beauty was the kind that needed no enhancement, the kind that made everything around him fade into insignificance. Ethereal. That was the only word that came close to describing him. At 20 years old, Kim Taehyung had transformed from a cute child into a breathtaking young man who seemed to exist in a category beyond ordinary human attractiveness. Beside Jungkook, he heard Jugk's sharp intake of breath, felt his twin's body go rigid with shock. They were both staring, unable to help themselves, unable to process that this vision of beauty was their Taehyung, their childhood friend. The boy who'd cried into their shirts and held their hands and promised to be their friend forever. Mrs. Kim noticed her son's entrance and beamed, gesturing him over. "Everyone, you remember our son, Taehyung? Though I suppose he's changed a bit since you last saw him." Changed was an understatement of cosmic proportions. Taehyung moved through the crowd with an unconscious grace, bowing politely to the older guests. His smile warm and genuine but tinged with shyness. He seemed unaware of the way every eye in the room had turned to him, the way conversations had stuttered to a halt, the way even the most composed adults were staring openly at his striking presence. Then his gaze swept across the room and landed on the twins standing frozen on the staircase. Recognition flickered across his beautiful features, followed by something that looked like disbelief, then pure, undiluted joy. His eyes, those incredible expressive eyes, widened, and that boxy smile they remembered from childhood spread across his face, transforming him from breathtaking to absolutely radiant. "Jungkook. Jugk." His voice was soft, uncertain, hopeful in a way that made Jungkook's heart clench painfully in his chest. Neither twin could speak. They just stood there, rooted to the stairs, staring at this apparition who somehow remembered them, who said their names with such fondness despite 13 years of silence. Taehyung's smile faltered slightly, nervousness creeping into his expression. You do remember me, right? It's been so long I wasn't sure if you'd." He trailed off, uncertainty making him look even younger, vulnerable in a way that made protective instincts surge through both twins simultaneously. That vulnerability broke through Jungkook's paralysis. He found himself moving down the remaining stairs, Jugk matching his pace exactly, both of them drawn to Taehyung like planets orbiting the sun. The crowd seemed to sense something significant happening and gave them space, conversations resuming in hushed tones around them. They stopped just in front of Taehyung, close enough to see the golden flecks in his eyes, to catch the subtle scent of something sweet and warm that clung to him. Close enough to confirm that yes, this was real, he was here. "Remember you?" Jungkook's voice came out rougher than he intended, emotion making it thick. "Taehyung, we could never forget you. Never. Not a single day," Jugk added, his usual intensity softened by something that looked dangerously close to wonder. "We've thought about you every single day." Taehyung's eyes filled with tears, though his smile never wavered. "I thought about you too. Both of you. I missed you so much." His voice broke on the last word, and before either twin could think about what they were doing, they were pulling him into their arms. Taehyung fit between them like he'd never left, like 13 years hadn't passed, like this was always where he was meant to be. He was warmer than Jungkook remembered, solid and real, and he smelled like home in a way that didn't make sense but felt absolutely true. Taehyung's arms wrapped around both of them, his face pressed against Jungkook's shoulder, his hand fisting in the back of Jugk's shirt. "I'm sorry," Taehyung whispered, his voice muffled. "I'm sorry we lost touch. I'm sorry I didn't try harder to stay in contact. I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing," Jugk said firmly, pulling back just enough to cup Taehyung's face with one hand, forcing him to meet his eyes. "We were kids. It wasn't anyone's fault. What matters is you're here now. You're really here." Jungkook couldn't stop staring at him, cataloging every detail, the way his eyelashes cast shadows on his cheeks, the tiny mole on the tip of his nose, the way his lips trembled slightly with emotion. Something was shifting inside Jungkook's chest, something profound and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. This wasn't the simple joy of reuniting with a childhood friend. This was something else entirely. The realization hit him like lightning. He was attracted to Taehyung. Deeply, intensely, overwhelmingly attracted in a way he'd never experienced before. And judging by the way Jugk was looking at Taehyung, with an intensity that bordered on possessive, his twin was feeling exactly the same thing. This was going to change everything.